All right, man. Thanks for tuning in to part one of Talkin Shop, a new series with Team Builder here. So we're here with Coach Brian Johnson. Man, Coach, thanks for hopping on with us for a second, man.
Oh, no, man. I appreciate you having me, man. It's always good to get on the mic with you, bro.
We'll see how good it is in a few minutes here, man. I heard you had a crazy couple of weeks here, man. Tell me a little bit what you got going on.
Oh, man. Yeah. So, accepted a job at Arkansas State with Coach Bush Jones. And it was a great opportunity, man. And, it was one of those things that interviewing over a phone call and Zoom, over COVID, is hard because I never met him. So we had a couple good conversations. I felt good about it and hopped in the U-Haul, towing my Jeep, and drove from Tucson, Arizona to Jonesboro, Arkansas. And then had my assistant actually come a couple of days after me. Yeah, so we're in the building working, looking up class schedules, trying to sort out workout times, getting to know the facilities, waiting on the guys to come in, looking for places to stay. And then I get another, call about an interview, which is funny because you hear about those things all the time in this profession. But in actually going through it, you're like, okay, how can I handle this? Because, like the coaching carousel, you always kind of know some of the predictable stuff. And then like something out of left field comes and everybody's like, who's going to get that? How's that going to go? So at the same time, everybody's hitting me up. Who you here getting Kyle? Who you here getting Kyle? And I'm like, well, I'm interviewing for, but I can't tell them that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, man, I don't know. I haven't heard anything. Right. So once again, going through Zoom calls, phone calls, trying to sell myself to someone who hasn't met me before, and ended up getting an offer to that job. So, the interviewing part was easy. The hard part was actually, telling the head coach that believed in you enough to hire you without knowing you that you were taking another opportunity was tough. Because I truly felt like, and I still feel like Coach Jones is going to be successful at Arkansas State.
Absolutely, man. And it's crazy because sometimes like that's the nature of the beast, man, and what we do. And it's such a tough situation that it puts a lot of people in. But ultimately, we're all professionals. We all understand it. Like, I know, so for example, I had a similar situation. Like, I was out of school and my contract was up. We had a great conversation with the athletic director. He was waiting on the president's approval to get my new contract and get my new raise, and everything was good. And in the meantime, I got offered another job. And the job was offered to me on Wednesday, and they were like, we need to know by tomorrow. And I'm like, man, okay. So I took the job. It's Wednesday. I'm getting on a plane to Las Vegas on Thursday. I left all my stuff behind, left everything. I literally got off the phone, talked to my family, said, hey, I'm taking this opportunity. I got to go. I called the AD. I said, hey man, listen, like this came up, I'm going to take this job. I'm in the airport, literally sitting in the terminal, and the AD calls me and says, hey, we got your raise approved. We got everything approved. Like, what are you going to do? And I was like, man, and at the time I was young and I was like, you know what, I'm going to stick to my word here. I already accepted this position. Like, I appreciate everything you guys have done for me, but I got to go, I have to take this job. And I mean, ultimately it all played out okay. But I think that's one of the hidden things that people don't realize, when you get into this industry. Like, those are some of the situations that come up, and it's never easy. It's never easy because, like you said, somebody put their faith in you to give you that opportunity. And you always feel there's always that part of you, because we're servant leaders. That's who we are. There's that part of you that's like, man, am I doing the right thing here? But you got to do what's right for your family and what sets up your career and your future as well.
No doubt. And, it's crazy that you just said that, because I was just talking to my staff a little bit just about my journey through, quarantine and in the heart of COVID, and, getting on podcasts like these and doing the clinic talks and things like that. And then you go through these situations and nothing really prepares you for it other than like, seeing it on Football Scoop or hearing these stories. And I was just telling my staff, who I've got a great staff full of young cats that are going to be stars in this business. Telling, like, just trying to school them on some of the things that I didn't get schooled on as a strength coach: contract negotiations, dealing with, the carousel and selling yourself to head coaches that never met you, because we're getting out of like that, oh, I want a strength coach that I've known for my entire career when it comes to these head coaches. They want a certain knowledge base. They want a certain person who can do some things as well as fit in their, whatever their culture is or what they're trying to build as a head coach in that building. So that even, added another layer to my leadership as a director over having a staff of 4 guys and trying to teach these young guys about the different scenarios and how the best way to handle them. Because, just like with everything, even in this situation, there are probably some things that I could have handled a little bit better, but just because of my lack of like knowledge or information or experience with this type of thing going on, I didn't handle it. I don't think I handled it wrong, but I do think, at least having a conversation or hearing about this type of situation would have helped me navigate it a little bit better. Just like sitting in the building, like, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get this job, but I don't all the way know I'm gonna get it. So I'm gonna go in the building and do work and try to like get to know these players and introduce myself, knowing that in about 12 hours, I could be on my way back across the other side of the country. You know what I'm saying? And just how to handle those things. And because, we are servant leaders and we care about our athletes. And, we know that it's hard to be introduced to some kids who are like, oh man, we got this new guy in here. And then all of a sudden he's gone, and what that does to them now. I don't think, it affects them that much because they're young and they understand the business too. And they're trying to get kind of in the business, as far as becoming professionals. But you always just have that in the back of your mind as how your actions affect other people. So one thing as older strength coaches, and guys who have been through it, females who have been through these things, like, we have to educate the younger strength coaches on how to handle these things, because even the contract negotiations and like not undervaluing yourself and making sure that it's going to be right, when you actually do leave a job, like, you need to make it worth it for yourself and your family to actually, because some people look at those things in negative ways, like, oh, the next opportunity, I don't want to bring this guy in because he might not be, we use the word loyal, right? Which is a big word we like to throw around in athletics, especially when it comes to the strength coach, loyalty, what does that mean? What is loyalty? What does that really mean? And educating these young strength coaches to be able to navigate this world, because this, you could be driving here and flying here, and in 2 weeks you've been offered 2 jobs. You know what I'm saying?
And it's crazy because you don't know. Like, I remember trying to negotiate. So when I got my first head job, I was 24 years old. I just turned 24. So I was young, man. Young, had no clue. 6 months earlier, I was an intern.
Right.
And so I remember when they offered me my first contract, I did no negotiations. I said, just whatever, sign it. I didn't even know. I didn't know about insurance. I knew nothing, man. I was just signing the thing. And the next time around, I asked for a raise and it went a little bit better, but I still didn't know what I was doing. And so I wouldn't say I successfully negotiated a contract until probably my 4th job. And I mean, that is so crazy because we spend so much time as strength coaches learning, like, how to program, how to connect with people, how to be a leader, how to do all these things. And then the financial piece and the negotiation piece is like, you just take what you get. And that's not right, So I'd love to ask you, like, what are some things you wish you knew when it came to contract negotiations? Because I know I have a couple that I'm like, man, I wish I would have known about that.
Right. First and foremost, just like about the years of the contract, having that understanding and like how you can negotiate that, what schools are really willing, what they're able or what they are willing to put out there as far as years on the contract. I think you definitely have to do that, because one, as a community of strength and conditioning coaches, we all complain about salaries and time, right? So the biggest thing and the craziest thing is we're tied to wins and losses. Even in an age where they're trying to put us in and tie us into medical, the last place I was at before these other 2 jobs, they were considering us medical. But then when it came down to it, we weren't safe like medical is. Our jobs were all dependent on what was going on with the head coach, and he was ultimately judged on wins and losses. So you have to protect yourself. You have to make sure that you can get as many years as possible. You have to make sure you're aligning yourself with the right people who are going to have a track record of taking care of people who do a good job, even sometimes when it doesn't mean that is not showing on the win and loss column, because you can't necessarily be judged by that. Are your players healthy to the extent, especially in these sports, there are hazards that come along with them. So you're not being judged on every injury, but for the most part, it's some of the unnecessary stuff being taken care of. Is the culture down in the weight room good? Are my players able to perform and do the things that we're asking them to do on a daily basis? Like, that's what we need to be judged on. Our organizational skills, our time management skills, because honestly, we run the entire thing. Like, we have to deal with the calendar and discretionary weeks and all of that good stuff. So you have to make sure that you're protected from a year standpoint, and making sure that that contract, whether it's a rollover, that they're coming with renegotiation after that first year, if you're in a 2-year, or in that second year, if you're in a 3-year, to make sure that you're able to protect yourself, and not even just yourself, but more importantly, your staff too. You want to make sure that if there are any bonus opportunities for your staff. And then young strength coaches, you want to know, hey, as a head strength coach, what is your stability like? Are you tied with this head coach? Are you tied in with the AD? How many years are on your contract? And as head strength coaches, we can't be shy about sharing these financial things with these young people, that we're responsible for their responsible for their livelihood to a certain extent, if you care about your people.
Definitely.
You know what I'm saying? So the years, the bonuses, even like time off. Like, I'm at fault at this. Sometimes I wouldn't be very clear about, when you could fly and go off, or when, we needed you here and when you needed you back. So that's something I had to get better as a head guy, is like defining when, hey, let's go through the whole calendar right now, so you can buy plane tickets in enough time, because my assistants aren't making a ton of money to where they can just buy a ticket 2 weeks before the flight. Maybe I can help save them a couple $100. So, just all of that stuff is just huge when it comes to negotiating that contract. And also understanding that you just can't look at what the last guy made who had your job at that place. You need to look at your entire conference. You need to factor in cost of living, right? And say, okay, well, look, this is what I'm bringing. I need to at least be in the median, or wherever you value yourself at. You think you need to be at the top, you need to go look at the top guys and get that average. Look at the median, get that average, and look at the low and get that average, and then figure out from there what you're willing to accept and what you don't want to accept.
100%. And then I think it goes a long way. Like, all those things you just talked about goes a long way. And we're working so hard to change the perception of strength and conditioning coaches, and that we're more than just sets and reps guys. Well, having these financial literacy skills and being able to go in and negotiate your contract and do it well, and understand, what you're asking for and why you're asking for it, and be able to talk in terms of, like you said, bonuses, time off, all these situations that come up, because you don't know, but we have to get better at that, because if the better we are at it, the more well-respected we are, because now we're not asking for a seat at the table. We actually sound like we deserve to be at the table. Because
no doubt.
A lot of times we just get slid contracts. And I like I said, I was guilty of this, man, till my fourth contract. You're just guilty of you just sign it and you're like, all right, cool. When do I start?
Yep.
And there's been jobs where I started before I signed my contract.
Yeah.
And they're working for however many days, weeks, whatever, without a contract, or going into your second year of your contract. Like you were saying with the rollovers, you need to know that up front. I got to a job, I got to my second year, I didn't know if my contract rolled over. I'm sweating. I'm like,
no doubt,
dude, I finally worked up the guts to go in, ask my head man, because I thought I was getting fired. I didn't hear anything about my contract. So I walked in, I'm like, hey man, what's the deal? And he's like, oh dude, no, just go upstairs and they got it. It's a rollover, man. You just got to sign a piece of paper. And I'm like, dude, I've been sweating for 2 weeks thinking I'm getting let go. Like,
no, that's real. That's real. And I also believe too that and maybe I'm patting myself on the back too much, but actually being hired by 2 coaches of the caliber that was hired in this last cycle, it kind of instilled like the importance of being able to explain our value as strength coaches beyond sets and reps and culture. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a larger picture for us as strength coaches, which is why we should be valued as like coordinators.
Yeah,
And that's why we should, I'm not saying that we, don't turn down a bunch of jobs because you're not getting like the highest amount of money. Like you get what you can get. All right. But at the end of the day, the more people that can not, like, we all know our value beyond it, but we have to be able to translate that to people who might not necessarily understand it. We go in there talking from the super training textbook, right? Or the essentials textbook. It's not going to happen. You have to be able to show and explain your value beyond the sets and reps and periodization and bioenergetics and biomechanics. Honestly, you really do.
Absolutely.
We have to get beyond that because, hey, we're in this business because we're all highly intelligent people. We get that. But we have to let other people know that, because there's still a huge like meathead, just like stigma that's placed on all of us. And I think that's another thing that we just have to do a better job as everybody from across the board. Myself is letting our value be known, because that's what's going to start in those negotiations. How well you can sell your value beyond putting a freaking bumper on a barbell, period.
Yep. And I think too, and you can weigh in on this, like I say this and it gets some pushback sometimes, but I don't care. I stand by it. People, if you're willing to get hired on an injury rate, you better be willing to get fired on that same injury rate, because there's some things that you can't control. So when people say, well, how do you measure strength and conditioning aside from wins and losses and injury rate? I say, I wouldn't want either of those things to be the stipulation in my contract.
Nope.
I mean, we have to, it's exactly like you said, like there's so much more that goes into what we do. Yep. You have to be able to sell those things.
You got to. From the beginning, like building your calendar. Like, what does that look like? Why are you putting a discretionary week there? Right? Why are we starting spring ball before spring break? Why are we starting spring ball after spring break? Not because, it was because I've been doing this for the last 10 years. It's because this is what this team needs at this time. This spring is not going to look like last spring. This upcoming summer is not going to look like last summer. And it's not going to, and 3 summers from now, is it going to look like this summer, right? Understanding that we, like as a profession, we can't keep just doing like the same stuff, expecting different results.
100%. And I think
because we're going to tell the kids that's insanity, but that's what we do.
Exactly. And I think
that's what we do.
It starts with educating ourselves, and it starts with coaches like you and some of the coaches that are now. I'm seeing the change is happening. The change is getting pushed. But it's all of us pushing it forward and pushing these conversations. Like, don't be shy about having these conversations with your young GAs, because we have to, what we have to do as strength coaches is create the next generation that's coming through that's better than us in every facet, in everything that we do. And part of that is learning how to, convey your worth, negotiate a contract, understand time off, understand sets and reps, understand culture, understand your role within that. Where do you sit within the organization? That's the other question, because obviously we all have in our contracts other duties as assigned.
Yep.
And where, how are we defining that? Where, we have to understand all these different things. And I think that, what you were just saying, like sitting down with your staff and just being straight up with them, like, hey, here's the calendar, here's time that you can go home, here's some things that I wish I knew. And I think that's where this needs to go, is every strength coach, when you get that director role, it's looking at your assistants and saying, these are 20 things that I wish I knew.
No doubt. That might not have anything to do with a freaking, you know what I'm saying? Like real life stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's have some real talks. Like, no, okay, just because you're wiping stuff down and trying to find some busy work to do so you're seen as like this hard worker, that is great. That's going to help set you up for success, but that's not going to necessarily be the thing that gets you where you need to go. Because 10 years from now, the best thing you say you could do is wipe something down when nobody's looking, then you're just still going to be wiping stuff down. Like, I'm just saying. So we have to get out of that, interns, you just clean up and you do all the grunt work. Yeah, that's kind of what it is, but you have to send them with something. I said something to someone the other day that, that they took as profound, but I said, your reputation isn't just what you've done for yourself. It's what you've helped other people do for themselves. That's what your reputation is built off of. And we're strength coaches. Don't we get that? your athletes, you know, you're going to sit there and you want to put on your bio how many draft picks you got. How many strength coaches have you helped get jobs?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the big question. That's what I love, man. It was always one of my favorite things that I did was the internship program and seeing former interns of mine. I'm a shout out right now, Autumn Lockwood. Shout her out just
big time job. Yes.
But it was she asked questions. She asked the right questions, and she was open to learning. And so for me, like people like that, and she's just one of many. There's a million others those are my legacy. Like just as much as my players, it's also the people that I've been around as coaches too, you know, and I think that speaks volumes about you as a leader, that's something that you're willing to say out loud, man. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time here, bro. I know you're a busy man trying to get settled in.
Yeah, man.
Thanks for joining us, man. Thanks for doing this. We're looking forward to getting some more content out with you moving forward with the new Team Builder platform, man. It's going to be a big one. So appreciate you, Coach.
I appreciate you having me.
All right, big dog.
All right, I'll let you.